In this lesson, we'll add a common iOS feature known as Swipe to Delete, which will allow a user to delete albums from their list. iOS makes use of a number of common multi-touch gestures. A common gesture supported in many apps is the ability to delete a row from a table simply by swiping on it. Doing so brings up a delete button, which the user can tap to delete the row, or they can tap elsewhere on screen to veto this action. Now, to implement this feature, we need to implement a couple of additional UI table view data source methods. Specifically, we'll implement the table view can edit row at index path and table view commit editing style for row at index path methods. You'll find some commented out stub implementations of these in the source already. Let's start with the first method. Our implementation of the can edit row at index path method is pretty easy. In fact, the implementation that we have already will work for us. Since all of the rows in our list are eligible to be deleted, all we need to do is simply return yes. If you wanted to delete some rows but not others, you could more selectively test which row the user swiped using the NSIndexPath instance that was passed to this method, and then allow or disallow the delete as needed. The slightly more complex implementation happens in our table view commit editing style for row at index path method. When the user taps the delete button on a row, this method gets invoked. So we first need to query its editing style argument. If its editing style is UI table view cell editing style delete, we know the user just tapped the delete button on this row. We then call table view delete rows at index paths with row animation. And this will actually delete the rows from our UI. Now, this method takes an array of index paths that identify the rows we want to delete. Since we're only allowing a single row at a time to be deleted, we create an NS array with a single index path in it. We've encountered NSIndexPath a few times already, but so far I've kind of glossed over it. Let me just briefly explain what this class is about. An NSIndexPath is an object frequently used when working with table views. It identifies both the section and a particular row in the section that the user is operating on. Many of the data source and delegate methods will get passed an instance of NSIndexPath, so you can get some insight as to which row the user is currently manipulating. Now, the one additional thing we need to add to this method is we need to actually change the state of the albums property that the view controller is storing. So I'm going to remove the row that the user currently selected. So I'll say remove object at index, and I'll pass in the index path row, and this will remove this from our underlying collection. Compile that, save. So if I swipe on one of these rows, I can now see I'm presented with the delete button. And we ended up with a crash. Oh, the one problem here is the order in which I'm deleting these things. Let me go back to the music list view controller. And I'm calling delete on the table view before deleting the albums. So let me first do that. So I'm going to remove it from the albums property and then call the table views methods. Because what it's complaining about is it's saying that the table view is currently out of sync with its underlying data source. So let me rerun this. View list and delete. That looks much better. So we can swipe on these all day long. This is kind of fun. But we do still have one problem. If I go back to the main view and then I click the view list button again, suddenly all of these rows are here again. Let me try deleting these once again. Delete a bunch this time to make it a little bit more obvious. And go back and come back into it again. Well, we can see everything's returning to the state it was previously. Although the row gets deleted from the UI, we haven't updated the state of our persistent data model. So we'll look at how to resolve that in the next lesson. You should now understand how to implement swipe to delete. This gesture is fairly simple to implement, and for most table views presenting an editable list, it's a good feature to implement as it's behavior that users have come to expect.